listening to the Digitally Irresistible Podcast, where we cover the optimization of digital technologies and irresistible people. Brought to you by iCore. Each episode features someone who sheds a little more light on the ins and outs of delivering a great employee and customer experience that has a measurable impact on the business. And now, here's today's guest. Welcome to another episode of the Digitally Irresistible Podcast. I'm your host, Bernie Borges. Today's guest is Lori Brown. Welcome, Lori.
Hey, Bernie. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for being here, Lori. Lori, you are a seasoned customer experience executive with more than 25 years background in the BPO industry, and more recently as a thought leader, consultant, and speaker. You help brands develop and evolve their CX strategy, enabling them to meet the rapidly changing demands of their customers. You embrace innovative technology that enables CX leaders to develop frontline employees into effective representatives of a brand, creating smiles for the customers that they serve. On this episode, let's discuss what it takes to equip frontline employees with everything that they need to succeed in delivering a great customer experience. But first, Lori, let's begin with your backstory. Tell us your backstory. How did you get to where you are today?
I'm going to put it all on retail. I grew up in the retail industry, serving customers, selling wool coats in Florida. And so it's been in my blood ever since. I got into BPOs because they were looking for people with retail service backgrounds. And as we like to say in the BPO industry, it's that accidental career, right? And 20 some odd years later, I'm still in it and I love it. I wouldn't be doing anything else.
So true. So true. I know so many people just here at iCore that have been with the company for 20 or more years.
Right.
It's amazing. Well, Lori, as you know from firsthand experience, frontline employees are the lifeblood of the customer experience. Tell us, how did you learn that to be true in your own career?
So Bernie, I learned it the hard way. I was in retail, as I said. I grew up in retail. I worked my way through college and managing a retail store. And one night, it's 9:00 and we're heading for the bars and the gates are down and somebody crawled under and said, I need something. I have an important meeting tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm sorry, we're closed. Fast forward the next day, I got to work. There was a very stern voicemail for me from our regional to called him, and he said, not sure if you actually knew who was in your store last night that you turned away. You need to send her a dozen roses, apologize, and let her know that she's welcome in your store anytime, because without our customers, we're just an empty box. So I learned the hard way, and I've kept that with me ever since, that the customers are always going to be number one, but it's the frontline employees that have to make them feel welcome each and every time they visit your brand.
What a great experience.
And I can look back and say it's great now.
Yeah, right. And it happened early in your career. So,
Yes.
you know, I can tell just by the way you tell the story, Lori, that you've taken that experience with you throughout your entire career.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
Sure.
Let's discuss the 5 key elements that frontline employees need to deliver a great customer experience. I know you've prepared 5 specific talking points. And the first one that I know you want to talk about is data. What about data is so important?
Yeah, Bernie, I mean, again, these are the 5 things that I think are important to the front line, having been in the BPO industry for the last, as you said, 20 some odd years. Data, speech analytics, interaction analytics has been the cornerstone of my career for the last, 12 years. We were early adopters in my company, and, really understanding data from your customers and your frontline employees is key. So it isn't just about capturing the data, because a lot of companies go, oh yeah, we capture all this data, we survey our customers. It's capturing and understanding and then actioning and measuring on that. And so to me, data is really important. I'm very big on making educated decisions. And without the data, you're just going on assumption. And that is not a way to run a business, is on assumptions. You need educated decision making, and you get that from the data that you're capturing.
Data-driven decisions. Yep.
Yes.
Love it. Love it. Okay. The next one on your list is environment. So you're going from data to environment. So why don't you unpack that one for us?
Sure. When you think about the environment, I mean, you know, the transformation, we talked about, work from home for years and years and years. With COVID, that quickly changed our landscape. What we talked about and when I say years, we talked about it for years. We literally did it in days. And we brought this, work at home environment into our, workplace. And we had a lot of challenges. And, now the dust has settled. And I think companies really need to think about the environment that they have for their front line. And again, I'm kind of speaking specifically to BPOs, contact centers, when I say that, in that, we're going to talk a little bit about technology, but making sure that they have the engagement there all the time, just as they would in the brick and mortar. Creating that environment of water cooler talk. I can't tell you how many ideas have been spawned out of, meeting someone in the break room as you're getting a drink or your lunch, and you're like, hey, have you thought about this? Or solving problems in that environment. And so making sure that you have an environment that's conducive to idea sharing, to peer-to-peer sharing. There's nothing better than to emulate best practices across the front line. And, I'm not sitting next to the person to hear what they're saying, going, hey, you just got that sale. Tell me how you did it. I've got to do other things. So I have to use tools and technology, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but really bringing that environment that's conducive to employee engagement, employee satisfaction. I'm a big believer, happy employees give great customer service. And so, when we think about the environment, those are the things that we should think about.
Absolutely. And what I would add to that, and I know that it's something we value greatly at iCore, is
Mhm.
just an environment where the frontline employees feel valued,
Right,
feel cared
right,
for and are
right,
cared for.
right,
So totally
right,
agree. That
right.
environment is very important. iCore's unified desktop technology can neatly bundle multiple applications, tools, and screens into one simple user interface. Launch relevant applications based on agent profiles. Automatically display corresponding scripts and customer interaction history, making it easy to deliver an exceptional customer experience at any scale. Smile with iCore. Learn more at iCore.com. Well,
Right.
you touched on it briefly, so
Right.
let's go there. Technology.
Yeah,
What role does technology play?
sure. Well, and then again, when you say feel valued, how more valued can I feel when I know that a company that I work for has invested in me by investing in technology? And, there's all kinds of technologies out there. I happen to work with a company that, we've developed a coaching tool that gives agents best practices, tells them how many times are they doing a best practice, how many times more do they need to do it to meet their metrics. And so, bringing that technology, I believe, into the workspace has has an effect on employees, because they look at it and they say, wow, our company feels good enough about us to bring in new technology. We know it costs money, but to really give us something that we can be successful with, that means a lot to me as an employee, and I feel valued. And so, again, I mean, I think about tools like, coaching tools, data analytics. So all of the things that really help an agent understand the customer, help, companies understand the customer, as well as the employees, what they're doing well and what they need help in, so that they can advance and be successful in their positions.
Yeah, and the word that comes to mind, you said it, is enabling, right? That technologies that enable the
Right,
employee, the frontline employee, to be effective and enable the supervisors and leadership
right.
to just ensure that that everyone is successful and that the environment is what it needs to be, as you said in the previous point.
Hmm.
The the fourth one is an interesting one, Lori. I wasn't expecting this to be on your list, but it's on your list, so I can't wait to hear you explain policies.
Uh-huh. Sure. Yeah. I mean, policies are meant to set a direction for an organization. If you want to be a customer centric organization, have policies, procedures that should drive customer centricity. I'm going to give you a perfect example. I was taking a flight a couple weeks ago. I got a new puppy. And so I had to call the airline and tell them I was bringing a pet home. But when I went to check in Fort Lauderdale, it wouldn't let me check in. And so I called and said, hey, it won't let me check in. Well, that's because you have a pet. I said, well, I have a pet coming home, not going out. Well, our policy state it's a pet ticket and you have to check in in the airport. And I was like, well, it's, a week before Christmas. The airports are crazy. I really don't want to get there 3 hours early just to tell you I don't have a pet. I'm sorry. That's just the policy. That's just the way it is. And so I caution companies that when they create policies to make sure that they understand the full downstream effect, not maybe just on the one, ticketing or the one, oh, well, the pet needs to have a seat and what have you, but the whole downstream effect of the customer journey and what it does to the customer journey. If you're looking to have a customer-centric organization, you need to make sure your policies are indicative of that customer centricity and not just policies for policy's sake.
Great story, Lori. And I'm not going to remark on it because my remark actually is related to your fifth and final element,
Okay.
and that's empowerment. So go ahead
Yes.
and unpack that.
Yes. So perfect example. I call up, this representative, and again, very nice. If they were empowered, right, to make that change for me, because again, I knew I had to pay an additional fee coming home. I knew I had to check in with the puppy coming home. They should have been empowered to say, okay, let me get you checked in here. But instead, all they kept telling me was, well, that's our policy. And I'm sorry, you have to check in at the airport. And so, if you think about it, you've invested in the environment, you've invested in technology, you've invested in training, right? You've invested in hiring the right people. Let's just start all the way at the beginning there and hiring the right people. But then to kind of handcuff them during their customer interaction by not giving them the empowerment to give the customer what they're looking for. And again, I know we deal with a lot of healthcare companies, a lot of financial. So we know there's a lot of regulatory, compliance issues out there. I get that. But when you're thinking about, again, the whole customer journey, I caution companies to, really look at the policies that they've created, look at those whole downstream effects and what that does to the customer journey and that customer experience, and start to look at it in each individual piece and make sure that you've got that customer centricity goal in mind. Because if you don't, you're going to have a lot of broken and fragmented pieces of the customer interaction that just don't lend itself to a great customer experience.
Well said, Lori. And I mean, let's face it, it's really difficult to put policies in place and think of every possible
Right.
scenario and then have policy that speaks to every possible scenario. I mean, it's just
Right.
it's if close to impossible, if not
Right.
impossible. So
Right.
I love your point about empowerment.
Right.
It also speaks to a trust issue as well, trusting the employees to do
Absolutely.
the right thing for the customer, for the business in that moment. So
Right. And
great.
really, and Bernie, that goes back to my very first one about, interaction analytics is you have the data. If there's reasons that you're not trusting what your frontline is doing, you can listen. You can read transcripts. You can really know what's going on in both the customer and the employee journey. That again, back to your point of feeling valued is giving them that empowerment makes them feel valued, makes them want to come to work every day, makes them want to stay with your company.
Exactly. So, Lori, how can CX leaders cope with the fast changing demands of customers in order to keep their frontline employees skilled and motivated to
Mhm.
deliver great CX?
Right. Listen to the customers and listen to the employees. And nobody knows better than your frontline employees what your customers want, what they're saying. Again, there's so much technology out there. And again, I think, I alluded to it earlier. I'm working with a company called Untangle. There's a coaching tool that they've developed that takes that data, all those interactions, and serves up to the agents, best practices and changes in behaviors and things that are happening on the calls, not a week ago, not a month ago, but 20 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, an hour ago, and helping them give that best customer experience they can deliver.
So, Lori, before we get to our final fun question,
Mhm.
where would you like to send people to connect with you and just learn more about what you've got going on?
Yep. They can visit my website at lbrowncxconsulting.com or visit me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, those that are watching on video are seeing that scrolling along the bottom of the screen.
Great.
And those that are listening on audio only, just check the show notes because they're linked up there as always. Well, Lori, now we do get to the final fun question. We
Okay.
like to know on the Digitally Irresistible podcast, when you're not working, what do you like to do for fun?
Good question. Well, I mean, I live on the beach in Fort Lauderdale, so what could be more fun than that? But when I'm not on the beach, I'm a new golfer. And so I'm trying to get in as many lessons as I can and hitting the driving range. And, again, I've been blessed to live down here in South Florida where the weather is just spectacular. And so that's really what I do when I'm not working.
That's great.
And
The
then
only thing I
talking
know
with
about
great people like you, Bernie.
well, Laura, I'll tell you, the only thing I know about golfing is that if I hit one ball really good in 18 holes, then I want to go back and do it again.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's about having fun.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, Lori, I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of the Digitally Irresistible Podcast. These are great 5 key points, 5 key elements that really help frontline employees deliver a great customer experience: data, environment, technology, policies, and empowerment. When you bring them all together, they're really just that perfect storm, if you will, to equip frontline employees with the ability to deliver a great CX experience. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thanks, Bernie. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Digitally Irresistible Podcast, where we cover the optimization of digital technologies and irresistible people, delivering a great employee and customer experience that has a measurable impact on the business. Brought to you by iCore. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss future episodes.